Welcome back to the Our View podcast. On today's episode, I welcome my guest, David Jeffers. David is a husband and father of two. Join our conversation as we discuss his spinal cord injury and how that has impacted his life, and also how we feel others view us as being Black disabled men. So thank you for joining me on this episode. And I just want to start off by asking you to introduce yourself, just because, I may know some things about you, but there may be some other things that you'd like to share about who you are. And, I would like for you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Okay. Well, my name is David Jeffers. I'm 42 years old. I'm married for 13 years. I have two boys, which they're 11 and they're 8. And that's it. I mean, I'm a father and a husband. That's my main thing, first and foremost.
Awesome. Yeah, that's and see, that's what I like. That's why I like my guests to introduce themselves, because I may say some things that may be important, but to you, like you said, you're a husband and a father, so that's really, really cool, really important.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you tell the story of how you acquired your injury, and what and then the follow-up question to that is what impact did the injury have on your body?
Okay. Well, I was injured August 1st, 2011. So 9 years ago, me and my family were headed out really to our first family vacation to the beach. It was Curry Beach near Wilmington. And we had been at the beach earlier that day and been hanging out all that day. And then they wanted to go back to the beach that evening. And I'm like, sure, it's vacation, let's go back. And the tide was coming in. So the waves were pretty rough. But, I was comfortable with it. Really, out of all of us, I was the only one in the water. And then, just like I've done a million times when a big wave was coming at me, instead of standing there and just getting toppled over by it, I tried to dive through it. And I guess between the force of the wave and the tide coming in, I tilted down enough where I ended up hitting a sandbar. And, I hit that and it broke my neck instantly. And I pretty much knew I was paralyzed as soon as I hit, because I was just remember praying, like, please just don't let me drown, don't let me drown. And then luckily my nephew Kyron was there and I was able to get his attention and he pulled me out of the water. So that's how it happened.
Wow. So you said you instantly knew that you were paralyzed. So you knew that you couldn't feel or you couldn't move, or what was that sensation like?
Yeah, I just knew I could not move. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, some people like talk about how, I could feel like I tried to move and I couldn't. I don't even remember trying to move. I just remember knowing that I couldn't. So it was
Okay.
kind of weird. I'm considered a C5, C6, but I damaged the C4 vertebrae. I think that one fractured. C5 totally shattered. I can't remember. I think C6 fractured. So I'm basically my C4 is connected to my C7 to stabilize everything.
Okay. So that did it leave how did it leave you paralyzed? Is it from your neck down, or from your chest, or just your legs?
Basically from, I guess, the nipple line in my chest down. So I do have some arm movement, but I don't have hand function really. Anything somebody sees with my hands is basically from flexing my wrist, and the tendons in my fingers are tight, so it looks like they're closing up. But I really don't have hand function. I don't have tricep function. Basically, any movement in my arms is from my shoulder muscles and bicep muscles. And then everything below that is pretty much nothing. I have a little sensation, like if somebody touches me, I might know it, but I won't be able to tell if it's hot, cold, or anything like that. So
Okay.
it won't be clear. I won't know if you're sticking me with a pin or if you're pushing something big on me. I won't know the difference.
Yeah, it all just feels like the same type of sensation. That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's similar to myself with my diagnosis of spina bifida. I can't feel below my knees, but I can feel
Right.
if something, like I can feel if something's on my foot, but like you said, I can't tell if it's hot or cold, or I can't tell if it's heavy, or if there's a nail sticking through my foot. I wouldn't be able to,
Hmm.
I wouldn't be able to tell if it's something that
Right.
causes pain or not. So it's just, there's some
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, it's some kind of sensation there, but it's like I can't tell exactly what it means.
Yeah.
So,
Like I broke my toe last year. I knew something was weird with it, but I
mhm.
didn't know I hit it hard enough to have broken it until it swelled up real bad, hours later.
Right. That's
So,
I was just going to say that's one of the things that I make sure I wear leg braces. I walk for short distances. And
hmm.
I wear leg braces, but if the brace doesn't fit properly, sometimes I might twist my knee or my ankle. And like you said, I don't know anything's wrong until, I have to keep looking at it and see if it swells up or, it starts
Right.
changing colors or something like that. So I always have to, I always have to pay attention to those types of things. And when I don't have my braces on, I have to crawl. So sometimes, I might knock it on, and I might knock my foot on the wall or something, just,
Yeah.
turning a corner too quick or hit it on the table. So, I do definitely have to keep an eye out on those types of things just to make sure that an injury isn't caused that I can't feel the pain from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then as far as other effects, I don't know how far you want me to go. Like I don't have bowel and bladder function and
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. Um, I have no core muscles, so it looks like I got this big, huge belly, but it's really I just have no muscles to hold my organs back.
Hmm.
Um, what else? I can't. I have real issues with extreme hot and extreme cold. Like my circulation is a lot lower because of an injury. So if I get cold, it really stays in my body for a long time and it's hard to recover. Same thing with overheating. Like I know it get to the point where it's hard to come back and I could get in trouble and have to go to the hospital if I overheat, so those kind of things too that you can't see necessarily, but I deal with as far as physical stuff.
Right. Yeah, that is something I just recently read about people who have spinal cord injuries. It's difficult for them to regulate their own body temperature.
Right.
I was actually listening to another podcast called Wheels Talk Official, and they it's two gentlemen and they have spinal cord injuries, and they were talking about how hot it's been in California. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard for them to regulate their body temperature once they get uh, once they get outside in the heat. And really interesting to hear, but it all makes sense because it's all connected to your your nervous system and that whole system of regulating temperature. So it does
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot of sense. Can you talk about what your life was like, what you did for a living before you acquired your accident, and um, how or if that has changed at all since your accident?
Yeah. Well, I can already tell you it's definitely changed like
Okay.
crazy. But
Mhm.
before my accident, I was a mechanical engineer in the automotive field. I did testing, whether it's vehicle testing or component testing. So I've always been a hands-on guy. Growing up, I used to like to take stuff apart, see how it works, and just as an adult, being an engineer, kind of doing the same thing, just on a different level. Um, we had bought a 1936 bungalow that we were trying to fix up. So, I enjoyed working on the house. And at the time, my first son was 2. So, hanging out and playing with him, taking care of him, I did that a lot. And then for hobbies and stuff, I used to like to produce music. I had a ton of vinyl records and my keyboard and all that stuff. I used to like to do that. And I used to like to ride my bike. So obviously after the accident, I'm not doing too much bike riding.
Mhm.
Um, I can't do the hands-on stuff around the house or even at work. Luckily, I got an opportunity to pick up some jobs where I can do engineering type work, where I'm doing consultant, like technical writing stuff.
Oh,
So at
great.
least I get to do that a little bit. Like I said, I prefer more hands-on, but it's a way to make some extra money and keep my mind sharp doing that. Um, what else? As far as music, I found things on the iPad where I can actually produce some music. So that's been kind of cool coming back to do that lately. And like you've seen my art, that's something I do now that I didn't do before my accident.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's really
How,
it, I guess.
how did you how did you become interested in art? And that was something, like you said, it was something you weren't really into before your accident.
Right.
Mm.
I was actually on Instagram, and a high school friend of mine DM'd me and said, "Hey, have you heard of this thing called Insta Vibes?" I don't know what that actually stands for, but basically where you take your cell phone and you edit pictures only using your cell phone, and you post them up on Instagram, and you kind of battle, trying to do the craziest
Oh,
looking pictures you can. And so I started doing that, and then it just evolved into a more artistic kind of thing. And then I realized that I could actually get them printed on canvases, which people really like. So I started doing that and selling those when I can. So
yeah. Yeah, I've seen some of your work. Yeah, that's really cool. I haven't heard of that. I'll have to definitely check that out on Instagram. And it's
yeah,
easy, and so that's easy for you to do from your phone, so you don't have to really do too much and invest in any special too much equipment for it. So that's a
right.
good thing.
And the
Yeah.
best thing about it, what made me like really get into it, it was one of the few things I could do without asking for help. After I got injured,
Okay.
I gotta ask for help for everything, whether it's getting food, drinking, everything. That's something I had my phone on my lap and I could just go to it. So that was a big help. Just mentally having something I could do on my own, it helped a lot.
Yeah, it helps. Like you said, my condition is different. I've known nothing but this diagnosis for myself. But you were an adult before you had your injury, so you weren't used to having to ask for help for everything. So I'm
Right,
sure. So I'm sure having that independence to be able to do something on your own, I'm sure that feels good.
mm-hmm.
But wow, so that's it's art. I'm not an artist as far as drawing or anything like that. But I find I write a lot, so like expressing myself
Yeah,
through writing helps me. And I don't play any instruments or anything like that, but listening to music and just really hearing the music itself like has been something that's been help for me, a therapy type of
yeah,
thing for me. So I definitely relate to your love of music in that way. And I
right.
admire people that are able to create it. I had someone on a few weeks ago on my podcast that's a music producer, and he had a
Mm,
brain injury. He actually had a brain tumor, brain
wow,
cancer, and he was still able to. He is still able now to create music for for himself and for other artists as well. So uh,
cool.
yeah, so being able to create just anything, I think that's a really really great thing when people are able to do that.
Yeah,
um,
and you mentioned writing. That was another thing I did after my accident. It wasn't on purpose because honestly, I never really was into reading or writing. But then I started
oh, okay.
writing little blog entries, and then people really started taking to them. And I was like, man, I actually can write pretty good. I don't know if just because the passion was there and it was coming out better, but that was kind of cool to see that ability kind of shine a little bit.
Yeah, and I think I started a blog too a few years ago, and I think people just really like hearing stories, and and being that they are real life stories, whether they're about your good day or your not so good day. It's really I think people enjoy the storytelling of it all. So it's really really great to be able to share that with people, and it's great that you were able to open up and share things on your blog, because a lot of people aren't comfortable with with sharing things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what is one thing that you've found to be the most difficult to adapt to since you've had your injury in any part of your life? Yeah, in any way.
I mean, I think the worst thing overall is it never stops. Like, there's never a day I'm not like up against something related to my injury. It's probably the
Mhm.
worst part of it all. I guess one of the worst things from it, I mean, just not being able to do basic needs for yourself,
Mhm.
bathrooming stuff, getting dressed is terrible. But then there's all the like nuanced stuff that people don't think about. Like, I'm married. If I touch my wife, I can't 100% feel it because I don't have all the sensation in my hands.
Mhm.
Or, my son was born, my second one, after I was injured. As a baby, I couldn't really hold him for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, and like I said, just constantly having to rely on people is pretty bad.
Yeah.
So,
And like you said, it's always there, right? It's
yeah, every day there's some new thing or some old thing that's happening that reminds me.
yeah.
So,
Um, with with all of the recent events of police brutality and things like that against men of color, um, how have you been able to manage the intersectionality of being a disabled man who is also a person of color? And or has that affected you or impacted you in any way?
uh, it has. This is gonna sound weird, and I don't know if anybody will agree with me or not. But sometimes, honestly, me being a black man in a wheelchair, I'm a little more acceptable. It's almost like the threat has been neutralized. Because I feel like there's people that talk to me now that I don't think if I was standing 6 foot tall, a regular healthy black dude, they would talk to me. And I don't know if that's something I created in my head, but I really feel like that happens.
Well, if you created it in your head, I created it in my head as well, because
Okay.
I feel the same way. And I just had this conversation with my mom a few weeks ago about that. Um, like you said, that the threat is gone, and I've used crutches and a wheelchair all of my life. So I
Mm-hmm.
haven't had that experience of not being disabled and possibly being judged because of being a black man outside of not having a disability. But I really feel, as you just said, that people are more comfortable around me and talk to me just because they don't perceive that I'm a threat because of me having the disability.
Right.
Um, yeah, the concern for me as far as the intersectionality of having a disability and being black is that I do drive a car. So, but I use hand controls, and I
Same
talk to a
thing.
yeah. So I talk to a few people, and I'm just like, people that are in law enforcement that I know I'm friends with or related to, and I'm just like, well, like, what if, you have to think, what if somebody comes up and sees my crutches sitting on my front seat and thinks it's a shotgun or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
If it's nighttime, if it's dark outside, and there's no way, back in the 80s or so, they had the baby on board sticker, so a baby was in the car.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of, like, is there a way to create something where you can identify yourself as having a person with a disability? And I've seen uh, videos of people who are paralyzed that can't get out of the car, and the cops drag them out of the car because they can't walk, so they're dragging them out of the car and they're tasing them and things like that. So
Right.
it's really something that I've become concerned about for myself, just because as I said, I drive, and I drive. I mean, I've driven down to North Carolina, so I've gone,
Mhm.
gone across state lines, and it's just, it would be nice if there was a way to identify, that someone in this vehicle has a disability, just because of, uh, just to help alleviate that stress that people might experience when they have to encounter, a law enforcement, just, the fear that might exist because of that.
Yeah, I've thought about should I put a sticker on my window because my hand controls, they're black, they're right beside the window, one of them, and then there's my steering control that normally sits down low, and they look in the car and they see this black thing possibly still in my hand, they might think that's a gun or something, and
Right.
yeah, I think it's the same thing. Even to just like keeping your hands up, like I can't keep my hands up for so long, guys, because of my
Right.
injury. So just little stuff that could go bad.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit of research, and to see what type of training that a lot of law enforcement go through for to talk about disabilities, and it's very, very little. A lot of times they don't have a lot of training to recognize disabilities and the types of effects that certain diagnosis can have. Like for you can't hold your hands up for a long time. So if that's a command that you're
Mhm.
getting over and over again, and you physically can't do it, um,
Right.
that could possibly cause some problems for people with a diagnosis like you have. So that's something I wanted to bring up, just because I've noticed I noticed in my research before I started the podcast, of looking into who the content creators are for podcasts. There aren't very many African American men, or men of color in general. So I wanted to make sure that in creating this podcast, I wanted to have men of color on the podcast, and to share their stories and their lived experiences with living with a disability and being a man of color.
Another thing that is related to that is, I feel bad that I'm not out there marching in some ways, but I just know I can't risk it out there in the wheelchair. If something really happened, I'd be a sitting duck. There's nothing I could do. So,
And that is another thing that I have thought about. It's like, yeah, like you said, you can't risk it being out there in a wheelchair. And so I do what I can on social media, and post certain things, and just to
mhm,
get just to get the word out. And again, through my blog, I've written what I've just shared with you about having my crutches on my front seat, and what you said with your hand controls, and what it could possibly look like at night, or when it's dark outside. um
right,
so it's really and sharing those stories on my social media sites, having the response of people saying, like, oh wow, I never would have thought about that. Even like
yeah,
relatives of mine, they were just like, I never would have thought about that for you. And I'm like,
yeah,
and I go out, I go out, I stay out late at night, and it's just and the one thing I would never do it anyway, but I'd always make sure I'm sober when I'm,
right,
after I go out, because it's just like, I can't walk straight when I'm sober on my crutches. So like,
right,
I just naturally don't have good balance. So
hmm,
so I always make sure, if I do have a drink, I don't drink for hours before I leave, before I know I'm leaving, just so I don't have to worry about that.
right,
Because and then also because of I have a shunt in my head because I have hydrocephalus. And
hmm,
naturally, my eyes can't stay to one side. So if I do like the finger test for a sobriety test,
right,
my eyes naturally bounce back and forth because of my shunt.
right.
So
You
so
you're in
I
trouble with that.
right. So I write about all this stuff, and people are just like, oh wow. Like, yeah, so uh, that's a
Hmm.
concern that I would have to have, that a lot of people don't have to worry about.
Yeah,
So, so it really it takes it to another level of, of what this all means for people, men of color who have disabilities, with everything that's out there in the world.
Yeah, and
So
especially too when I'm driving, I don't look disabled per se. You
right.
know, because I remember one time I was trying to park somewhere, and a construction guy had parked in a handicap spot, and we're kind of going back and forth, and he wouldn't move. So I finally just parked somewhere else, and I came rolling out. He was like, "Oh man, I had no idea. I thought you were just, trying to be funny and wanted this spot and blah blah blah. I couldn't.
Oh
So
wow. Wow.
uh,
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. But it really is, that's the thing, because it doesn't that's one of the big things I want to try to communicate through my podcast too, is that like all disabilities don't look the same. Um,
right.
there are some people who have spina bifida like me who can't drive a car. There are
Mm-hmm.
people like who have the same level of injury as you that can't drive a car. So
Right.
it's and so the fact that like disability doesn't look the same, and we're not, just because I have a wheelchair doesn't mean I'm riding necessarily in a wheelchair accessible vehicle, because I can also walk. My chair
Yeah.
folds up and goes in my trunk. So
Right.
I drive a Toyota Matrix. So
Right.
and unless if you look in my trunk, you don't see my chair. So it's really that's really interesting, because they a lot of times people expect a disability to look a certain way, and
Yeah.
and that's not always the case for it. So just to wrap up everything, I always like to end with this question of all my guests, and that is, what do you want the world to know about those who live with disabilities? And that can be anything you want them to know about.
Um, just one, we're just normal people, treat us that way.
Hmm.
And then I guess two, just always realize when you're talking to somebody, really disabled or not, you don't know what they're going through. So give them some grace, like pretty much every day I'm in a good amount of pain, and I try to keep positive, I try to keep cool, but some days it's just more than others and I can't. So, just think about what somebody might be dealing with when you're interacting with them.
That's
That's probably the
really,
best thing.
yeah, and that's really, really important. And like you said, whether they have a disability or not, just to extend that kindness and uh, yeah, extend the kindness to them, I think is really, really important, because you don't know what people are dealing with. And, like you
Right.
said, the pain that people are dealing with, whether it's physical or emotional. And it's just, you don't know how your words may impact them in a positive or negative way. So to always
Right.
just extend the kindness to people, I think that's a very good message for sure. Yeah, so thank you so much, and I look forward to talking to you all soon, and hopefully when I get back down that way sometime, I will be able to meet you in person, David, and
That'll
be
be
able to,
good.
yeah, be able to hang out and talk and stuff. So looking forward to getting out of the house sometime soon to travel
Yeah,
again.
it was real cool to meet somebody who had my same view about being neutralized. I thought
Yes.
maybe I might be crazy, so that was nice to hear.
Yeah, that was really that was really interesting, because I really had that conversation with my mom, saying how me being in a wheelchair, I think takes away the threat to for a lot of people.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
which is really interesting. But but you all enjoy the rest of your day, and
All right, you too.
yeah, and I will be in touch again, like I said, with some other topics that we can discuss, and have you on with maybe some other couples in the future, and talk about your experiences of
Sure.
being married. But
Sure.
That'll work.
yeah, all right, you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right,
Thanks. All right.
thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Our View podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the Our View podcast on Anchor, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. New episodes will be released on the 15th and 30th of every month. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Our View for Life. That's OURVIEW, the number 4, LIFE. Do you want to help change the tone of conversation among your family and friends? Head over to our website for some Our View merchandise. Our website is www.our-view.com/merchandise. I thank you for listening. Have a great day and take care.